The anti-rape movement. Sensitive topics are discussed in this video, such as rape and sexual assault. For a long time, women were like objects. They were considered inferior to their male counterpart in every way. Women had little to no say in how they lived their lives, and men could take advantage of them very easily. When the time came to stand up for their rights, women addressed the issue of rape. Rape is defined as forced sexual intercourse without consent from one party, usually the woman. Before the 1970s, when the issue was addressed, victims were typically too afraid to report their rape. The count of reported rapes in the 60s was very low, and who knows how many rapes there actually were. In 1971, it was officially addressed by the New York Radical Feminists, a group of women who fought against sexual assault, molestation, marriage rights, motherhood, and rape. They held speak-outs against rape, bringing awareness to the issue and telling people to stand up against it. Throughout history, there have been a variety of ways to deal with rape. In the 11th century, the penalty for rape was death. Rape was considered property damage against the father or husband of the victim, not a crime against the victim herself, further proving the fact that women were considered objects. After the 12th century, rape was viewed as a crime of violence, and the penalty was still death. Unlike the 11th century, when the victim was still free, they started to kill the victims, probably under the notion that there was more she could have done to prevent the crime, so she was at fault as well. In the 15th century, the fathers and/or husbands of the victims would fine the rapists for their crime. By the 1600s, people were arguing that there was little to no evidence of the crime, therefore they did not know the credibility of the report. This idea most likely made victims think that no one would believe their claim. In the 1800s, most people assumed rape was committed by a black man and the victim was a young white virgin. Also at this time, it was perfectly legal for a slave master to rape his slave, and wives could not turn down intercourse with their husbands. The spark that helped light the flame of this movement was none other than Joanne Little. Joanne was a 21-year-old black woman who was a prisoner at Beaufort County Jail in 1974. Clarence Alligood, a 62-year-old white male, raped Joan in her cell in the middle of the night. Joanne caught him off guard and stabbed him 11 times with an ice pick that he had brought with him into her cell. She was able to escape because Clarence was the only guard on duty that night. Eventually, she was caught and then tried for second-degree murder. She argued that it was self-defense, and the jury declared her not guilty. She became the first rape survivor to be acquitted of using deadly force to resist rape. Joanne's story showed other victims that they could get justice against their rapists, although they didn't have to go to the same lengths she did. Also in 1974, rape shield laws were introduced. One of the laws says that if a woman was raped by a previous sexual partner, the report is still valid. Just because someone consents to intercourse once doesn't mean they will every time. The laws also give women privacy when prosecuting rapists. That means a woman's sexual history and previous sexual partners are not allowed to be used against them in court. A big thing the anti-rape movement encouraged was the number of reported rapes. In 1960, the number was at about 17,000 reported rapes. Fast forward 15 years, right after the Joanne Little case, the number was at 56,000. Taking population increases into consideration, this is still a lot more cases reported since the 60s. In 1972, rape crisis centers were introduced. Victims need help to deal with trauma from their rape, and a few women answered the call, literally. The first crisis center, Toledo United Against Rape, now called the YWCA, was a place for rape survivors to report their rape and to have a person who will listen and believe them. At first, Toledo United Against Rape struggled to find people to work the phone, but now all crisis centers have a 24/7 line for victims to call. The anti-rape movement has had a positive social impact on our society. Since the 70s, there have been multiple rallies and protests against rape. They defend women, saying that they have no control over rape. What they wear doesn't matter. How they act is not an invitation to rape. Crisis centers like the YWCA are national, and most have a 24-hour call line for those who need to report rape, assault, or abuse. Unfortunately, in this day and age, Drugs like Rohypnol have made rape and sexual assault easier for offenders. Rohypnol, a very potent sedative, is often crushed up and slipped into a girl's drink. Since Rohypnol has no taste or smell, it is undetected and can render you unconscious before you know what happened. Rapists take this chance to rape girls and women. It is considered rape because you cannot get consent if the other party is not in a state to do so. Being Rohypnol, a nickname for Rohypnol, can also cause a lapse in memory, so a victim may not even know if they've been raped. This drug is extremely dangerous, so women must be careful to not take drinks that they didn't see made and pour their own drinks. They shouldn't have to do this, but it's a necessary measure to protect themselves from offenders. I would also like to acknowledge the rape of men. Yes, it's uncommon, but it still happens. In 2016, the government started to add the reports filed by men to the reported rape count. The number jumped from about 92,000 to about 132,000 in the years 2015 and 2016. The focus has been on women because this movement was a big part of women's rights and how they've gained those rights. The anti-rape movement is considered a frontier because this was the first time women stood together as a united front against rape and created lasting change. The victims that have recovered from rape have to be some of the strongest people on the face of the earth. The anti-rape movement has changed so many lives and will always be remembered in the eyes of all women as the time we fought for something and we changed it for the better. If you are struggling with rape or sexual assault, please call or visit the YWCA for help.